This is a place where stories are woven softly, thread by thread, until they become a blanket of quiet comfort around you. Before we begin tonight's story, let's take a few moments to settle the body and quiet the mind. If you'd like, close your eyes now. Let the rest of the world fade a little. Notice where you are, the shape of the room, the stillness of the air, the gentle warmth that surrounds you. Now, take a slow breath in through your nose. Feel your chest lift and your belly rise. And then slowly breathe out through your mouth, as if you're blowing warm air onto a window. Let your shoulders drop and feel that breath leave gently, like a sigh. Again, inhale softly, not too deep, just enough to feel the cool air enter. Pause for a moment and exhale slowly. Each time you breathe, imagine the air moving like a wave, in and out, steady and kind. Your body begins to understand this rhythm, the same rhythm as a calm sea at night, the same rhythm as the fire in the hearth. If your mind begins to wander, that's perfectly fine. Just notice it and bring it back to your breath, back to the sound of the fire, back to the quiet in your room. Now feel your body growing heavier, your hands resting loosely, your jaw unclenching, your eyes softening behind closed lids. Let your breath find its own pace. There's nothing you need to do. You are safe, you are home, and you are ready to rest. The table beside the window is worn smooth in the places hands return to most often, and tonight Liv lets her palms rest there for a moment, as if the wood itself can remind her to slow down. Outside, snow keeps falling, not loudly, not urgently, just steadily, like someone turning the pages of a book in another room. She takes a pencil from the small cup by the lamp, the one with a tiny chip on its rim, and she draws the tip across the paper to make a neat line at the top. Christmas preparations, she writes gently, and then beneath it she begins her list. Pine branches, a string of lights, candles, small things for the windowsill, wrapping paper and twine. Each word lands with a soft, dry sound, graphite over paper, paper over wood, and the quiet seems to widen around it. The stove, still modest, still half awake, begins to warm the room, its heat drifting outward in slow waves until the chill that came in with Liv's coat starts to loosen. She reaches for her mug, and the moment her fingers touch the ceramic, she feels the comfort of it, a warmth that isn't only temperature, but familiarity. Steam rises, pale and patient, and it briefly clouds the lower edge of the window before thinning again, like breath. Along the sill, a thin line of snowlight lingers, a narrow glow where the world outside presses gently against the glass. Liv pauses, not because she has forgotten what to write, but because she can hear the house listening, the faint tick of cooling wood, the hush of snow against the roof, and the quiet, steady promise that she can do this one small step at a time. She adds another word at the bottom, careful and plain, home. And then she smiles, only a little, as if the list has already begun to work. By the time Liv steps into the bakery, the air has already changed her breathing. Here, the cold stays outside, caught in the doorway with the last gust of snow, while inside, warmth and flour and spice settle softly on the skin. The bell above the door gives its small, familiar ring, and somewhere deeper in the shop, an oven clicks, as if answering her. Her mother looks up from behind the counter, hands dusted with flour, sleeves pushed back, and she gives Liv that gentle, knowing smile that says, "You've come at the right time." "I packed it for you," her mother says, and slides a brown paper bag across the wood. Liv opens it just enough to see, a firm, cool lump of gingerbread dough wrapped tight, the dark warmth of cinnamon tucked into the scent already, and a smaller pouch with dried orange peel that smells like winter sunlight. Beside it, carefully placed, are a few beeswax candles, their surfaces smooth and pale, and when Liv lifts one, it feels heavier than it looks, like something honest. On the counter, her mother sets out a small tin of cookie cutters, stars, hearts, a little fir tree, and one shaped like a simple boat, worn at the edges from years of use. "Take twine, too," her mother adds, and a coil of string rolls gently into Liv's palm. Then, as if it is only another everyday detail, like the price of butter or whether the snow will keep falling, her mother says softly, "Your dad's been busy with the tides these past couple of days. The island can't spare him." Liv's fingers still, just for a second, around the twine. She doesn't let the words become sharp. She doesn't let them turn into anything heavy, but she feels them fold quietly inside her, the way paper folds in on itself. Liv answers, light as breath, as if she can tuck the sentence into her scarf and carry it without dropping it. Her mother doesn't press, only reaches under the counter and brings out one more thing. A sheet of sturdy craft paper, a small handful of tiny bells with a soft gold shimmer, almost like crushed light, and when her mother shakes them gently, they make a sound so delicate it could be snow itself. "For the cottage," she says, and her voice is warm in the way a hearth is warm, not loud, just certain. Liv gathers everything into her arms: gingerbread dough, cinnamon, orange peel, beeswax candles, the cutters, the twine, the paper, the little gold bells. And when she steps back into the snowy street, the bakery's warmth clings to her coat for a moment longer, like a small, sweet promise she can take home. With the bakery bag tucked close against her coat, Liv follows the road that curves down toward the water. The town feels quieter here, as if the buildings have learned to speak in softer voices whenever they come near the sea. Snow drifts sideways in thin, pale sheets, and the air changes, cleaner, sharper, touched with that unmistakable salt that seems to wake every sense at once. Down at the harbor, the boats sit moored and still, their ropes dark with damp, their hulls wearing a fine dusting of snow like sugar. Somewhere, metal taps gently against metal, a small, patient rhythm, and the gulls keep their distance, tucked away in the weather. Liv slows, not because she has to, but because something in her always softens near the water. Out beyond the nearest pier, the fjord opens wide, a gray, breathing stretch of winter sea, and there, half hidden by snow mist and distance, she sees the island. Not close, not far, just present, like a thought you can't quite stop returning to. Its shape is a low shadow against the pale sky, and along its edge a few work lights burn, steady and practical, like small stars that have chosen to stay low to the earth. Liv stands with her scarf pressed higher against her cheeks, and she lets her eyes rest on those lights. She doesn't try to imagine exactly what her father is doing, only the simple fact of him being there, in that cold, in that wind, moving through his work with the same calm insistence as the tide itself. A familiar voice calls her name from further down the pier. It's one of the harbor men, someone who has known her family for years, someone who speaks in short sentences and honest weather terms. He lifts a hand in greeting, and Liv walks over, boots crunching softly through the snow. "Heading up to the cottage?" he asks, glancing at her paper bag. "Yes," Liv answers, and her voice comes out warm from the bakery air still lingering in her breath. She hesitates, only a beat, then asks the question she pretends she's only asking casually. "Do you think he'll be back soon?" The man's gaze shifts out toward the island, toward the low lights blinking through the mist. He doesn't shrug exactly, but his shoulders lift in a way that says, "The sea decides." Depends on the weather and the nets and how the harvest goes. Liv nods. She knows that answer, has known it for years, the same way you know the sound of your own footsteps. There is no sadness in her face, not really, only that familiar feeling of waiting that isn't dramatic, a longing opened by wind, like a curtain shifting just enough to let the cold air touch the warm room behind it. "All right," she says softly, and she offers a small smile that feels more like steadiness than cheer. The man tips his cap, returns to what he's doing, and Liv turns away from the pier, the harbor behind her still tapping and breathing. But as she walks, she carries the island lights with her, low stars in the snow mist, and a quiet thought folded carefully, like paper tucked safe inside a scarf. The path home takes her away from the water, up through the edge of the woods, where the trees grow closer together and the world turns hushed. Here the snow feels different. It doesn't rush. It doesn't whip at her coat the way it does by the harbor. It simply falls, soft and thick, and the branches above hold it like a secret. Liv steps off the main road and onto a narrower track, one that curves between dark trunks and dips into a little pocket of shelter. Her boots sink slightly, and each step makes a muffled sound, a soft, satisfying whumph, as if the snow is taking her footsteps and keeping them. She pauses where a small spruce has dropped a few branches, the tips still green beneath the white. The needles are stiff with cold, but when she lifts the branch, it releases a quiet scent, sharp and clean, the smell of winter forests and deep, hidden resin. She gathers a handful, only what has fallen, only what the trees have already let go of. A few pine cones lie half buried nearby, their scales dark and neatly layered, like tiny, patient roofs. She picks them up and shakes the snow away gently. 1, 2, 3. The motion slow enough that the world doesn't feel disturbed. Her gloves brush against the cut end of a branch, and a small stickiness clings to the fabric. Sap, warm in smell, even when it's cold to the touch. Liv brings her hand closer to her scarf, not to warm it, just to breathe it in. The scent rises as if it has been waiting to be noticed, and for a moment it feels like a path. Not a path you can see, but one you can follow anyway, the way certain smells lead you back through time without asking permission. She walks on, collecting a few more spruce tips, a short length of fallen evergreen, and one particularly perfect pine cone that looks as though it has been set there on purpose. The needles prick her palm lightly through the glove, a tiny, awake sensation that keeps her present. Her breathing warms inside her scarf, turning the air beneath it soft and damp, and she can feel the heat of her own life returning to her cheeks. By the time she reaches the edge of the woods, her arms are full of green. Not much, just enough to bring the forest home, to make the cottage smell like something living, to lace the warm rooms with a hint of winter outdoors. Liv adjusts her grip on the branches and continues up the path, snow falling quietly behind her, and the pine resin on her gloves like a small, fragrant compass pointing the way. By the time Liv reaches the cottage, snow has begun to settle into the corners of the world, into the grooves of the steps, the edges of the railing, and the soft shoulders of the roof. Inside, the air greets her with that familiar, quiet warmth, wood, wool, a hint of yesterday's fire. Solveig is already there. She sits at the table as if she has been waiting, not in impatience, but in readiness, hands folded, a calm smile resting in the lines of her face. "You found good branches," she says, and her voice is gentle, like a blanket being lifted. Liv sets the greenery down carefully and begins unwrapping the bakery bag, dough, spice, beeswax, but Solveig only nods, as if all of that can wait until the house has its light. Without a word, she reaches beneath the sideboard and draws out a small wooden box. It is old, the kind of old that holds stories in its joints, darkened at the corners, polished where fingers have opened it year after year. When Solveig lifts the lid, the smell that escapes is faint, not a perfume exactly, more like the memory of winters kept safely away. Inside, wrapped in tissue and soft cloth, lie ornaments that do not try to be perfect. A few glass balls, slightly clouded with age, one with a small swirl of green paint, another with a thin crack like a pale vein. Two little hearts woven by hand, red thread and cream thread, their loops slightly uneven, which makes them dearer. And then, near the bottom, a small cluster of shells, each one drilled and threaded with fine string. Simple, pale, the kind you might pocket absent-mindedly on a beach and later discover in the lining of a coat. "These were your father's," Solveig says, quietly, "from the island years ago." Liv's hands move toward them without thinking. Her fingertips find the smooth curve of one shell, and for a moment she forgets the room. There is a faint salt scent still clinging to it, not strong, not fresh, but unmistakable, like sea air on a wool sweater. Liv's breath catches, almost imperceptibly, and her hand stills just for a second, 1 second, where the cottage is silent except for the snow outside and the soft ticking of the stove. Then Liv blinks and the moment loosens. She sets the shell back gently, as if placing something delicate down on a shelf inside her. "Let's put them up," she says softly, and Solveig's smile deepens, not with pity, but with understanding. Liv fetches a cloth and begins with the window frames. She wipes the wood where the cold has left a faint dampness, tracing along the edges as though she is drawing the outline of comfort. The glass fogs for a moment from her breath and clears again. Then she hangs the wreath, pine and spruce, on the wall near the door, tying it with a strip of ribbon that slips through her gloves. When it settles into place, it looks as though the forest has leaned in to listen. Next come the lights. Liv takes the string from its coil, untangling it with patience, finding each little bulb and separating it from the next. She drapes it along the beam, down the corner, across the shelf where the old books sit. Solveig holds the far end as Liv climbs onto a small stool, steady hands offering the kind of help that doesn't hurry. When the last section is in place, Liv plugs it in. There is a pause, a quiet breath between dark and bright. Then one bulb flickers, then another, until the whole string glows. Not harsh, not bright enough to wake you sharply, just warm and steady, like stars slowly remembering how to shine. The cottage changes in an instant. The corners soften, the walls seem to draw closer, and the air itself looks warmer, as if lit from inside. Liv stands down from the stool, and for a moment she simply looks, as though the room has been gently kindled, not by flame, but with welcome. In the kitchen, Liv begins with the simplest comfort. A pot on the stove, water poured in with a soft, hollow sound, and then the slow gathering of winter ingredients. Slices of dried orange peel, a cinnamon stick, a few cloves that look like tiny dark nails. She adds them one by one, as carefully as placing ornaments back in their box. Solveig sets out mugs on the table, thick ones that hold warmth well, and the beeswax candles wait nearby, still unlit, their pale surfaces catching the new glow from the string lights. Soon the pot begins to murmur, not boiling, not impatient, just a quiet simmer, a gentle sound like conversation muffled by a closed door. Liv opens the gingerbread dough and presses it onto the floured counter, rolling it with slow, even strokes. The dough gives off its deep, sweet spice, and the whole room seems to lean toward it. She chooses a cutter, a little window shape, then a small boat, and then, without quite knowing why, she reaches for the simplest round shape. She cuts carefully, lifts each piece, and places it on the tray as if arranging small promises. The oven is already warm. When Liv slides the tray inside, a wave of heat meets her face, and she closes the door with a soft click that feels final in a comforting way. Time moves differently then. While the gingerbread bakes, Liv mixes a small bowl of sugar and a little water into icing, stirring it until it turns smooth and glossy. Steam rises from the pot now, pale and drifting, curling upward like a slow ribbon, and for a moment it looks almost like fog over the fjord. Liv fills the mugs. The scent, orange and cinnamon and something deeper, spreads through the cottage and settles into the wood. Solveig takes a sip and nods once, as if approving a familiar recipe. When the gingerbread is done, Liv sets the tray on the counter. Heat rises from it, a visible haze that softens the edges of everything, like the room is exhaling. She waits for the cookies to cool, hands resting on the counter, watching the lights glow in the corner of her vision. Then she begins to decorate. Liv pipes the icing through a small paper cone, and a thin white line appears, delicate as snowfall. She draws windows first, little squares and rectangles, as if building tiny houses on the surface of each biscuit. Then she draws a boat, a simple curve, a small sail. And then, almost without thinking, she draws an island, just a shape, low and steady, a small outline set alone in a wide blank space of gingerbread. As she finishes it, her breathing changes. It softens, slows, as if her body has remembered something before her mind has put a name to it. Solveig watches, but she does not comment. She simply reaches for a wooden spoon and gives the pot a gentle stir. The spoon taps the side of the pot, a clear, bright little sound, clean as a bell. Liv blinks and smiles faintly, not at any joke, not at any sadness, just at the strange tenderness of noticing your own heart. Solveig speaks at last, voice low and sure. "The scent will remember the way," she says, as if it is the most ordinary truth in the world. And in the warm kitchen, with sugar like snow, and steam like fog, and lights like slow stars, Liv continues decorating, one careful line at a time. Later, when the kitchen has settled into a gentle afterglow, and the gingerbread has been moved to a tin, Liv remembers the ribbon. Red ribbon for the wreath, for tying parcels, for making the cottage look like something you've been waiting to see. She finds the stairs that lead up to the attic narrow and familiar, each step giving its soft wooden complaint. Up there the air is cooler and quieter in a different way. Not the hush of snow, but the hush of stored things. A single small window sits under the eaves, its glass rimmed with frost, its light thin and pale. Liv moves carefully, one hand sliding along a beam as she crosses the room. The old chest is where it has always been, tucked under a sloping wall, a blanket draped over it like a sigh. She lifts the lid, and the scent that rises is dry and slow. Cedar, dust, and the faint sweetness of time. At first she sees what she came for, a spool of ribbon, red as berries, slightly crushed for waiting too long. She takes it out, but her fingers don't stop there. Beneath the ribbon are folded things, thick wool, weathered fabric, items kept not because they are needed every day, but because they belong. Liv's hand finds a sweater. It is heavy, knitted tight, the kind of wool that holds its shape through years of cold. Her father's sweater. She lifts it and feels the weight of it settle in her arms, and for a moment it feels like holding a person without needing them to be present. Underneath are gloves, waterproof ones with worn seams, creased at the fingers where work has shaped them. Liv picks them up slowly and turns them once over, as though she is reading them. The roughness of them catches against her glove, a texture like net rope, like dockwood, like cold sea work. She lays one glove in her palm, just there, resting in the center of her hand, as if she needs to confirm something simple and quiet, that he still belongs to this house, that his things still have a place where warmth waits for them. There is a faint smell, not fresh salt, not strong fishery air, but that familiar trace of sea and wind caught in fabric and memory. Liv's throat tightens, not in sorrow, only in recognition. Her father has never been a man of long goodbyes. He works with tides and schedules that can't be argued with, and the island, so close that it can be seen from the harbor, holds him for weeks at a time. 2 weeks, sometimes 3, long enough that the cottage grows used to his absence and then has to remember him all at once. When he does come home, he brings the island with him, the roughness of rope against his palms, the smell of kelp and cold wind in his coat, the tiredness in his shoulders that still can't hide the steadiness in his smile. Liv has never blamed him, not really. She understands work that is seasonal, work that depends on weather and harvest and the sea's own timing. Still, standing in the attic with his glove in her hand, she feels something tender open inside her. Not anger, only a sudden, quiet wish that he could sit under the Christmas lights, feet stretched towards the stove, hands empty for once, no rope, no tools, just warmth. Liv sets the glove down carefully, folds the sweater with a gentleness that feels like speaking softly. Near the bottom of the chest, she notices something else, a small sketch on stiff paper, an island outline drawn in pencil, or perhaps a short length of old knotted cord, its knots neat and practical, a work knot made without decoration, only purpose. Liv touches it once with her fingertip, then closes the lid. The attic holds its quiet again. With the ribbon in her hand, Liv goes back down the stairs, and each step feels steadier, as though she has carried something unseen back with her. Downstairs, the cottage is glowing. The string lights in the living room cast their warm little stars across the walls. The candles on the counter wait like sleeping moons. Liv sets the ribbon aside for now and turns her attention to the table. There is something about a table that can change a house. Not the wood itself, but what you choose to place on it and what it promises. Liv smooths a cloth across the surface, a simple one, woven thick, the color of winter cream. She runs her hand from one end to the other, flattening the small wrinkles, making the space ready. Then she brings in the pine, a few sprigs placed along the center, not too much, just enough, so the forest is invited but not overwhelming. A small candle goes next, and then another. Solveig comes in quietly and helps without speaking, setting a little dish for matches, placing a folded napkin where it looks right. Liv steps back for a moment and looks. The room is warm, the air scented with spice, and the table seems to glow softly in its own small world. Then Liv reaches into a cupboard. She takes out a wooden cup, smooth with age, the kind that fits perfectly in the hand. There is a name carved into it, not fancy, not polished, just letters pressed into the wood with patience. Or, if not a cup, she chooses a plain plate and sets it down with a care that feels ceremonial. She places it in its usual spot, not at the edge, not tucked away, a fixed position, a coordinate, a way of telling the room and herself this space is still held. When Liv lights the candle, the flame trembles briefly, a tiny flutter in the warm air, then steadies. Its light catches the rim of the wooden cup, and the curve shines softly, like moonlight on a quiet sea. Liv watches it for a moment longer than she needs to. The flame, the glow, the steady warmth around it. Then she exhales, slowly, as if releasing something she didn't realize she was carrying. The place is ready, not because the person is here, but because the house remembers how to welcome them the moment the door finally opens. When everything is nearly done, when the table looks ready and the cottage feels wrapped in its own gentle light, Liv finds herself reaching for paper. Not the sturdy brown wrapping paper first, but a smaller piece, a card, slightly textured, pale as winter daylight. She sits at the table, the candle flame nearby moving softly with each breath, and the string lights watching from the corner of the room like patient stars. For a moment she only holds the pen. There are so many things she could say, so many ways to make longing sound large or heavy or dramatic. But Liv doesn't want that. She wants her words to be like the cottage tonight, warm, simple, steady enough to lean on. She begins. The pen makes a faint scratch, a small sound in the quiet. She writes about the lights first, because that is what she has done with her hands, and what her father will understand without explanation. I hung the string lights, she writes, and the living room looks like a small sky. She pauses and then adds, the gingerbread is baked. The orange and cinnamon are in the air. It's a strange comfort noticing how ordinary words can hold so much. Then she writes what matters most, in the plainest way she can. I left the lamp you like by the window, the one that makes the snow look softer. If you come in late, you won't have to search for the warmth. She reads the sentence back once and feels the tightness in her chest ease a little. Not gone, just gentler. Solveig, meanwhile, has been moving quietly in the kitchen. She doesn't interrupt. She sets a small square of cloth on the counter, soft cotton, warmed between her hands, and begins to fill it with small, fragrant things. Pine needles first, a little bundle, green and sharp-scented, as if a piece of the forest has been folded into her palm. Then dried orange peel, thin curls that smell like light. Then a few cloves, dark and glossy, each one a tiny anchor of spice. She gathers the corners of the cloth and ties them with a simple knot, firm, neat, kind. A sachet, a pocket of home. When she brings it to the table, she sets it beside Liv's card. For him, Solveig says softly, as if offering something obvious. Liv touches the little bundle with the tips of her fingers. The scent rises immediately. Pine, orange, clove, and beneath it the warmth of the cottage itself. It smells like a room waiting with love, without asking for anything in return. Liv slips the card into an envelope and then wraps the sachet in tissue so the scent will travel gently, not loudly. If the harbor man sees her tomorrow, she can give it to him, a small message carried over winter water. Or if the weather keeps the boats from moving, she can tuck it into the gift bag by the door and leave it there until her father finally comes home. Either way, it will be ready, just like the table, just like the lights. By the time night has fully settled, the snow has thickened. It falls in a steady veil, softening the edges of everything outside, turning the world into a quiet blur. Inside, the cottage holds its glow. The string lights are still on, warm dots along the beam, the shelf, the corner of the room. On the windowsill, a candle burns, its flame small, steady, like a heartbeat you can see. The air smells faintly of gingerbread now, and beneath that, the last curl of orange and cinnamon from the pot. Solveig has gone to bed, leaving Liv in the gentle hush that comes when a home is finally done for the day. Liv moves slowly through the rooms, checking small things. A blanket folded over the chair, the matches placed neatly beside the candles, the wreath sitting straight. Not perfection, just care. Then she finds the brass lantern. It sits by the door, a familiar shape, slightly dented at one corner, polished where it has been handled often. Liv carries it to the window. The metal feels cool at first, then warms slightly under her palm. She sets it on the sill and adjusts it so it faces outward, toward the fjord, toward the faint direction of the island hidden in snow mist and darkness. Outside, there is nothing to see but falling white, but Liv knows what is there. Water, distance, and those low work lights that sometimes shine like stars. She lights the lantern. The flame inside catches, and the glass glows softly, casting a warmer circle onto the wood. It feels suddenly like the cottage is speaking, not in words, but in light, a quiet message sent across the snow. I am here. I am warm. I am waiting. Liv stands there for a moment, watching the reflection of the lantern in the window. Two lights, one inside and one reflected back, as if the house is keeping itself company. Then she turns away. Up in her room, she changes into something soft. Wool socks, a worn sweater, fabric that carries the comfort of many winters. She slips beneath the blankets, and the bed takes her weight with a gentle sigh. Outside, the wind moves along the eaves, and the cottage answers with small wooden sounds, a quiet creak here, a settling there, the language of a home holding steady against weather. Liv lets her eyes close. She thinks of the ornaments in the wooden box, the shell that smelled faintly of sea, the glove resting in her palm in the attic, the place set at the table like a coordinate. And slowly she understands something very simple. All this decorating, all this light and scent and careful preparation, it isn't for perfection, it is for welcome, for the moment a door opens, for boots on the floor, for a familiar coat smelling of wind and salt, for someone to finally sit down under the Christmas lights and rest. With that thought settling gently inside her, Liv breathes out, slow and warm, and lets the cottage keep watch at the window like a small, steady lighthouse in the snow. Good night.